The average American household is now worth over $1 million. That is not a typo. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the average net worth of American households crossed $1 million. The average, not the top 10%, the average. If you are watching this, you probably do not feel like that number includes you. And you are right to be skeptical, because that average is one of the most misleading statistics in personal finance. The median net worth, the actual middle of the distribution, where half of households fall above and half fall below, sits closer to $190,000. The gap between those two numbers exists because a relatively small number of extremely wealthy households at the top pull the average dramatically upward. The math is that simple, and that distorting. So when people online tell you that becoming a millionaire is easy, that it is just about mindset, that anyone can do it with the right morning routine, they are usually working from the average, not the median, and they are usually trying to sell you something. But here's what is actually interesting. When you look past the headline numbers and into the behavioral patterns, what the Federal Reserve data shows what large-scale studies of actual millionaire households reveal, clear and repeatable habits emerge, not overnight success stories, not people who got lucky with a single investment at the right moment. Real households that built seven-figure net worth over decades through specific, identifiable behaviors. That is what this video is about. 5 of those habits in the sequence that makes them work. No speculation, no motivation, just what the patterns consistently show. Before we get into them, one definition that matters. When we say $1 million net worth, we mean assets minus liabilities. Everything you own minus everything you owe. Retirement accounts, investment accounts, savings, home equity if you own, minus mortgages, car loans, credit card balances, student loans. Homeownership is one path to building equity, but it is not the only path and it is not required. The target we are talking about, roughly $1 million in nominal net worth reached somewhere between age 50 and 65, is a credible, realistic outcome for someone who starts behaving deliberately in their 30s or early 40s. It is not fast, but the data shows it is real, and it is more common than most people assume. Inflation will erode some of that purchasing power over time, which is exactly why the habits that grow assets faster than inflation are the ones that matter most. Here is what drift looks like in practice. Mid-30s household, 2 incomes, decent combined earnings, enough that they should feel further along than they do. They financed an SUV 2 years ago because the monthly payment felt manageable at the time. They take a vacation or two each year on a credit card they intend to pay off but usually carry a small balance on. They contribute just enough to their 401k to capture the employer match, which is genuinely smart as far as it goes. But nothing beyond that. They have a high-yield savings account they think of as an emergency fund, but it also functions as a vacation fund and an occasional treat fund, so the balance stays thin and gets rated regularly. They are not in crisis. They are comfortable, mostly. But their net worth is nearly flat because every dollar that arrives finds somewhere to go before it can become capital. And somewhere in the back of their minds is a thought that feels completely reasonable. We will catch up later. When things calm down. When we earn a bit more. When life gets less complicated. Later is the most expensive word in personal finance. Here is why, without making any specific return promises. The mechanism that builds net worth over long time horizons is compounding. Growth that generates its own growth. What makes it powerful, and what most people underestimate, is that it is not linear. It accelerates. In the early years, the numbers look almost insultingly small. A few $100s a month invested produces modest results in year 3, year 5, even year 8. But by year 20 and year 25, the same monthly contribution is generating more in a single year than it generated in its first decade combined. The base gets large enough that percentage gains translate into real dollar amounts. That is when the math becomes genuinely difficult to catch up to. A 10-year delay does not cost 10 years of progress. It costs the most powerful decade on the compounding curve. The one at the end when the numbers accelerate fastest. That cost cannot be recovered by saving harder later. The time cannot be bought back. This is not meant to produce anxiety. It is meant to produce clarity. The system rewards starting, even imperfectly, even small. The 5 habits that follow are how you start, and more importantly, how you stay. Habit 1 is automatic interception at source. This is the root lever. The data on this is consistent enough that it belongs at the beginning of every serious conversation about building net worth. Studies of millionaire households point to consistent automatic saving and investing, money routed before it reaches the spending environment, as the most commonly cited behavior across the board. Not stock selection, not market timing, automation. The mechanism is straightforward. Money that never appears in your checking account cannot be spent on lifestyle. When savings and investment contributions are routed automatically, through payroll deduction, through a same-day transfer that fires the moment your direct deposit lands, they become structurally invisible to your daily spending decisions. They are gone before the brain registers them as available. And because the brain adjusts remarkably quickly to whatever balance it sees as a starting point, within a few weeks the lower number feels normal. The old amount is simply never missed. The psychology of resistance is the feeling of losing control. People want to see the full paycheck arrive and choose deliberately how to allocate it. The problem is that deliberate allocation in the presence of visible money and competing lifestyle priorities almost always goes to lifestyle. The decision gets made when the money is most visible and the spending pressure is highest. Automatic interception removes the decision entirely. The system chooses before the spending conversation can start. For example, someone who sets up even a modest automatic transfer, 5% of take-home pay routing to a separate account on payday, will often find that within 60 days the adjustment feels completely normal. The lifestyle did not collapse. It recalibrated to a new baseline, and the separate account is growing without requiring any monthly willpower or deliberate choice. The smallest credible start is one automatic transfer, one account, set once. The amount matters less than the structure. The structure is what holds. Automatic systems outlast motivation every time. Habit 2 is tracking net worth and cash flow monthly. Not obsessively, not with a complex system that takes hours to maintain. Neutrally, consistently, once a month. The mechanism is visibility. Net worth, assets minus liabilities, is the only number that tells you whether your financial life is actually moving forward. Income does not tell you that. A spending budget does not tell you that. Net worth tells you whether the gap between what you own and what you owe is growing or shrinking over time. And monthly cash flow tells you where the money went, which categories absorbed it, which ones are running on autopilot at sizes you have not consciously approved, which ones are quietly larger than you assumed. The psychology of avoidance is that looking feels risky. If you do not check, you cannot be confronted by what you find. But avoidance does not change the numbers. It removes your ability to respond to them. Neutral observation, no judgment attached, just data collected, is what creates the conditions for different decisions. And research into financial behavior consistently shows that people who track their finances make better decisions over time. Not because tracking is magical, but because visibility removes the comfortable fictions that avoidance allows. For example, someone who spends 20 minutes at the end of each month categorizing transactions and updating a simple net worth figure will often notice things within 2 or 3 months that they genuinely did not know. Forgotten subscriptions, spending patterns in categories they assumed were small. The month-to-month movement of the net worth number, even a modest upward trend, creates a feedback loop that reinforces the habits producing it. Track the number, let the number inform you. That is the whole habit. What you measure, you can eventually move. Habit 3 is holding lifestyle below your means, with an intentional lag on raises. This is the habit that lifestyle inflation defeats, quietly and consistently in household after household. The mechanism works like this. When income rises, lifestyle has a gravitational pull upward. The car gets upgraded, the apartment gets nicer, the dining gets more frequent and more expensive. Each individual upgrade feels deserved, and individually it often is. The problem is that the upgrades move together, and they move immediately, so the gap between what comes in and what stays never widens. The raise arrives and lifestyle absorbs it within weeks before it can be converted into capital. The intentional lag is the countermove. When a raise comes in, the automatic transfer from habit 1 gets increased first. Lifestyle receives a smaller share of the increase, or none of it initially. The spending baseline stays approximately where it was for the next 90 to 180 days. Then, if the income feels stable and the financial goals are being funded, a deliberate and modest lifestyle adjustment can happen as a conscious choice rather than an automatic default. The psychology of resistance is permission. A raise feels like it has been earned, which it has. Spending at a higher level feels like evidence of having made it. Holding the lifestyle flat, or not expanding it immediately, can feel like deprivation even when objectively nothing has been lost. The reframe is that the raise did happen. A portion of it is being routed to the future version of this household. The lifestyle share is still real. It is just not the entire amount. For example, a household that receives a $400 monthly raise and immediately reroutes $200 of it to their automatic investment transfer has effectively expanded their forward progress without the lifestyle changing at all. 6 months later, they can choose to adjust the lifestyle share deliberately. Many find that after 6 months, they have already forgotten what the old income felt like, and the new savings rate has become the new normal. Lag the lifestyle. Let the gap grow first. Habit 4 is eliminating high-interest consumer debt before investing heavily in other directions. The mechanism is straightforward. Debt carrying an APR above roughly 9 to 10%, and in many cases, credit card debt sits well above that, often around 20 to 23%, represents a guaranteed negative return on whatever money is not being used to retire it. Investing while carrying high-interest debt is often a losing trade mathematically. The investment needs to outperform the debt costs consistently just to break even. And that assumes the returns are reliable, which they are not in the short term. The priority sequence that the data supports most often: capture any employer 401k match first, because that match is an immediate guaranteed return that high-interest consumer debt cannot beat. Then direct available cash flow at the high-interest debt aggressively until it is eliminated. Then expand investing more broadly. Debt below that 9 to 10% threshold, a mortgage, lower-rate student loans, can often be carried alongside investing, because long-term expected returns from a diversified portfolio may reasonably exceed those lower debt costs over time. High-interest consumer debt almost never meets that condition. The psychology of resistance here is that paying down debt feels like standing still. You are not buying assets. You are not watching a balance grow. The payoff feels invisible compared to watching an investment account increase. But eliminating a 23% debt is a 23% guaranteed return on every dollar applied to it. That return is not available anywhere else at any risk level. It just does not feel like investing because the account number that goes up is the one tracking what you owe, not what you own. For example, a household carrying $8,000 in credit card debt at 23% APR and making only minimum payments will spend years paying primarily interest, while the principal barely moves. Redirecting even $300 a month above the minimum payment toward that balance changes the timeline dramatically and frees up cash flow that can then be fully redirected into investing once the balance reaches zero. Kill the high-cost debt first, then invest from a position of strength. Debt above 10% is a fire. Put it out before building. Habit 5 is long-horizon diversified investing with consistency, and it is probably the most underappreciated factor in the entire dataset. The mechanism is participation over time. Studies of millionaire households show repeatedly that what separates them from households with similar incomes is not superior stock selection. It is not market timing. It is not access to exotic investment vehicles unavailable to regular people. It is simply being invested, staying invested through volatility, and letting time do what time does when compounding is working on a growing base. The majority of millionaires in large-scale studies use straightforward approaches: employer retirement plans, broad diversification, low-cost index options, and held them through every recession, every market correction, every moment when selling felt like the rational response. The Federal Reserve data makes the timeline clear. The average age of a millionaire household head is around 61. The majority of millionaire households are between 60 and 79 years old. Millionaires under 40 are statistically rare. The average time horizon in studies of wealth-building households is close to 3 decades. 28 to 30 years of consistent behavior through job changes, recessions, family expenses, health events, and every other disruption life produces. This challenges the narrative that wealth is built fast. The data does not support that narrative for the overwhelming majority of millionaire households. What it supports is duration, staying in the market when it drops, not liquidating the retirement account during a job transition, not pausing contributions when life gets expensive and resuming them later, maintaining the habit through the period when progress feels invisible, the early years when the base is small and compounding has not yet reached its acceleration phase. Life does produce shocks. Markets are volatile. Income gets disrupted. Health events happen. This is exactly why the emergency buffer matters. A liquid reserve that absorbs the unexpected without forcing you to liquidate investments at the wrong moment. The system needs slack built into it. A buffer is not a luxury addition to the plan. It is what keeps the plan intact when real life arrives. For example, someone who begins investing a modest amount in their early 30s and continues through their working years, increasing contributions as income grows, holding through downturns, not timing exits, arrives at 60 with a compounding curve that has had 30 years to accelerate. Someone who starts at the same age but pauses and restarts several times, or waits until their 40s to begin in earnest, arrives at 60 with a fundamentally different outcome from the same income. The gap is not primarily about how much either person earned. It is about how many uninterrupted years the compounding curve had to run. The data on inheritance is worth stating clearly here. Studies of millionaire households consistently show that the large majority, in some analyses, close to 80%, receive no inheritance at all, not a small one, zero. They build what they have from ordinary incomes, through ordinary careers, over ordinary decades. The path is not exclusive, it is just slow. And slowness is the thing that most people are unwilling to commit to, which is exactly why the results remain uncommon, even though the method is not. Stay invested, extend the time horizon as far as it can go. Let compounding reach its acceleration phase. The decades are the asset. Protect them. Here is where all 5 habits connect. They are not independent tips. They are a sequence. Automatic interception funds the investing. Tracking makes the system visible and accountable. The lifestyle lag prevents the surplus from being absorbed before it can compound. Eliminating high-interest debt removes the guaranteed drag on every investment dollar. And long-horizon investing is what converts all of it into lasting net worth over time. None of these habits require extraordinary income, none require perfect execution, none require financial expertise that takes years to develop. What the data shows consistently is that the households who reach seven-figure net worth did so through behaviors that are mechanical and repeatable, not through brilliance, not through luck, not through access that most people do not have. The process is boringly mechanical, and that is precisely what makes it work. Boring systems maintained over decades produce results that feel extraordinary from the outside, but are entirely explainable from the inside. One action this week: set up one automatic transfer, even a small one, that triggers every payday to a separate account before the money enters your spending environment. Not next month, not when the budget feels more comfortable. This week. The amount is not the point right now. The structure is, because the structure is what every other habit builds on. If this kind of clear, calm breakdown of how money actually behaves over time is something that is useful to you, subscribe. There is more coming, built on the same foundation. No hype, no shortcuts, just the patterns the data actually supports.